Hello, BookTube, and welcome to our ongoing reading of the Gospel according to St. Luke. We are reading it in the King James Version, and we are up to chapter 19, which starts with a little story, but then gives a longer parable that is a real puzzler. We'll go over it again. This is chapter 19. And Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was the chief among the publicans, and he was rich. So he's a tax-gathering official, and he's wealthy. And he sought to see Jesus, who was and could not for the press, because he was of little stature. He's a little guy. He wants to look at Jesus, but he can't do it. And he ran before and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him, and said unto him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must abide at thy house. And he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all murmured, saying that he was gone to be guest with a man that is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said unto the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore him fourfold. And Jesus said unto him, This day is salvation come to this house, forasmuch as he is also the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man is come to seek and save that which is lost. So Zacchaeus, despite being a rich publican, is a good man. And Jesus knows his name, knows exactly who he is. Is that because Zacchaeus is famous, or is Jesus exercising a tiny bit of divine knowledge there? But then we get the story. This you're going to have to help me with, or maybe I'll help you with it. And as they heard these things, he added and spoke a parable, because he was nigh to Jerusalem, and because they thought that the kingdom of God should immediately appear. He said, therefore, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom, and to return. And he called his 10 servants, and delivered them 10 pounds, and said unto them, Occupy till I come. But his citizens hated him, and sent a message after him, saying, We will not have this man to reign over us. And it came to pass that when he was returned, having received the kingdom, then he commanded these servants to be called unto him, to whom he had given the money, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. Then came the first, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 10 pounds. In other words, the man traded or invested it and increased the money. After he said unto him, Well, thou good servant, because thou hast been faithful in every little way, have thou authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 5 pounds. And he said likewise to him, Be thou also over 5 cities. And another came, saying, Lord, behold, here is thy pound, which I have kept laid up in a napkin. For I feared thee, because thou art an austere man, thou takest up that thou layest not down, reapest that thou didst not sow. And he saith unto him, Out of thy own mouth will I judge thee, thou wicked servant. Thou knewest that I was an austere man, taking up that which I lay not down, and reaping that I did not sow. Wherefore then gavest thou not my money into a bank, that at my coming I might have required my own with usury? In other words, if you're not going to invest it, why didn't you at least put it in a bank, where it could be earning interest? And he said unto them that stood by, Take from him the pound, and give it to him that hath 10 pounds. And they said unto him, Lord, he hath 10 pounds. For I say unto you, that unto every one which hath shall be given, and from him that hath not, even he that shall be taken away from him. But those my enemies which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me. And that's the story, which we can recap. A man goes into a far country, and he leaves money behind to his servants. He does not give them any specific instructions about the money. He's hated by the country that he enters into, and so he returns and asks his servants to account for them. One servant has invested his money and made a lot of profit. Another servant has invested his money and made a moderate amount of profit, and then the third servant has invested none of his money and hands him back what he was handed. And the man excoriates the third servant. Why didn't you make me more money? I love to lay my hands on profits that I did not earn. I love to claim things that are not mine. You knew this about me. You knew that I was an a-hole, that I was austere. Why didn't you do this? You were warned about what I was like, and yet you didn't do this. You did only the responsible thing. You kept my money safe. What on earth is this parable supposed to mean? it's like I've said, we've encountered a version of this a couple of times already. Clearly, the landowner in this parable is supposed to be God. And yet, he is clearly the villain of this story, unless you just have to put yourself in a mind frame that says he's not. Where I guess the homiletic here would be that the faithful are supposed to be always earning. They're all supposed to be out there always increasing the bounty that has been handed over to them. They shouldn't just sit on it. And that if they do, they can expect to be excoriated, although that's not the punishment laid out here. Death is the punishment laid out here. It's odd. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. How you, especially those of you, I notice, I would be willing to bet none of you have ever had this read to you from the pulpit, because it is so puzzling. But what do you make of it? But we're going to move on. We'll move on to the end here. And when he had thus spoken, he went before, ascending up to Jerusalem. And it came to pass, when he come nigh to Bethphage and Bethany, at the mount called the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of his disciples, saying, Go ye into the village over against you, and in which at your entering there ye shall find a colt tied, whereon never yet has man sat. Loose him, and bring him hither. And if any man ask you, Why do you loose him? Thou shalt say unto him, Because the Lord hath need of him. And they that were sent away their way found even as he said unto them. And as they were loosing the colt, the owners thereof said unto them, Why loose ye the colt? And they said, The Lord hath need of him. And they brought him to Jesus, and they cast their garments upon the colt, and they set Jesus thereon. And as he went, they spread their clothes in the way. And when he came nigh, even now as the descent of the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works which they had seen, saying, Blessed be the King that cometh in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. And some of the Pharisees from among the multitude said unto him, Master, rebuke thy disciples. And he answered them and said, I tell you that if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. So Jesus is warned by the disciples, your crowd, not only are they giving you a hero's welcome into the city, but they are proclaiming you to be the king. They're proclaiming you to be king. And those guys in armor on the walls of the city, those are Romans. They're not going to want you to do that. Rebuke your disciples. Make sure they don't do this. We don't know at this point that warning from the Pharisees is uttered in anger or contempt at all. It could just be a very sensible warning, and Jesus completely ignores it. He says that if the crowd didn't praise me this way, the very rocks would praise me this way. There's no point in restraining them. And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thy eyes. For the day shall come upon thee, that thy enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee. And they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And if you're wondering, what on earth does this mean? This has the look of a prophecy. I have known fundamentalist Christians who don't understand anything to call this a prophecy that is fulfilled because Israel is surrounded by enemies. No, not at all. This is a cheat on the part of the author of the Gospel according to Luke, who is casting this as a prophecy because he's writing it years later. He can put into Jesus' mouth words that look like prophecy only because he knows how they turn out. What is being referred to here is the destruction of the great temple in Jerusalem in AD 70. The misery that comes to the city, the leveling of the walls, the trench laid around the city, that's a specific mention of siege warfare. The author knows that. The author is writing from that post-temple period. Jesus is living prior to that and seeing it in this passage. And he went into the temple. Notice the temple is the very next thing mentioned. And began to cast out them that sold therein, and them that bought, saying unto them, It is written, My house is the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And he taught daily in the temple, but the chief priests and the scribes and the chief of the people sought to destroy him, and could not find what they might do, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. So we get this same pattern that we had, that's the end of the chapter, we get the same pattern that we've had when we've seen this story play out in the 2 previous Gospels, which is that Jesus enters Jerusalem very much as an enemy. The people that are buying and selling in the temple, they are the people who are, first of all, paying a significant cut to those temple authorities, to the chief priests of the temple. They're making a very good living off the people who, in the forecourt of the temple, sell sacrifices. Because all of this ran on blood magic, on blood sacrifices. They would sell you living animals that you would then kill on the altar. And that was a booming business. There were markets, the whole farms that made these animals and brought them to market to sell to those moneylenders. They would also change your funds. Pilgrims came to the great temple from all parts of Judea. They might have different funds. They might need lesser amounts to pay little bits and pieces here and there. It was a booming business, and Jesus attacks it. I think, as in the earlier Gospels, so too in this revelation of this incident, I think we can probably interpret this metaphorically. Those armed Romans on the walls would certainly not have allowed him to stop this commerce. And also the chief priests of the temple have guards. They would have put him out right away. This is a little bit more like the temple business, or take up the cross. When Jesus, a couple of chapters ago, told followers to take up his cross, they have no idea what that means. That's the author of the book writing from a later vantage point. And I think that's true here. I think the author is thinking, well, I'm writing a story in which you, the reader, already knows that this is a holy figure. So I can have him do these things that in reality he would not have been allowed to do. He would have been just a rabble-rouser. Either the temple guards or the Romans, or maybe the merchants themselves who would have had paid guards, would have stopped him from doing that. But the note we end on is the note that we've heard over and over again, which is not only that the scribes and chief priests of the temple hate him and want to destroy him, but that they can't because he's surrounded by crowds of people. Even in the temple, he's surrounded by crowds that want to hear him, and that could get ugly if he were taken or approached. That is the human drama that is now set up for the final acts, the final segment of this gospel, is that the chief priests need to find a way to get at him. They know what they want to do. They just need to find a way to do it. So we'll wrap up this chapter for now, and we will move on next time. I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.